So today is called Get a Grip on Your Business, 6 keys to getting what you want from your entrepreneurial company. My name is Joseph Jaffe, and I am a professional EOS implementer with EOS Worldwide. So we're going to begin, and keep it simple is going to be a common theme coming throughout this entire webinar. We're going to do 3 things today, and only 3 things. We're going to get real, we're going to get simple, and then hopefully you're going to be able to get what you want from your business. Of course, the $1 million question, maybe it's a $1 billion question, is what do you want from your business? It doesn't matter what you want. What does matter is that you're able to get it. And the good news is you should be able to. You always should be able to, as long as you are keeping it real, keeping it simple, and putting a plan in place. And that's what today is all about. So let's get real. And to start off with, I'm just going to talk about journeys. I'm going to tell you about the founder of EOS, Gino Wickman. I'm going to tell you his journey. Then I'm going to spend just a few moments telling you about my journey. Obviously, this is all about the intersection of journeys, so to speak, because then we're going to talk about our journey or your journey, and we'll see whether in fact these DNA strands will all come together and combine. So let me take a step back and actually tell you a little bit about Gino, and then we'll get into these discoveries in a moment. Gino, lifelong entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, helps turn around his family's business, ends up exiting the business, and all the while, he's one of the founding members of EO in Detroit, one of the 10 founding members, and he gets just bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. He starts talking to tens, hundreds of entrepreneurs and really finding out what's keeping them up at night. What are their challenges? And he starts to document them, and he notices at one point that there are about 136 unique challenges. And I say unique challenges because, of course, they're all unique. They're all like, well, you don't understand our business, right? You don't understand our industry. We're completely unique. Of course, the reality is that they're not unique at all, so to speak. What happens is we find out that we actually have so much in common with one another. But when we are, at the rock face, when we are absolutely knee deep in the day-to-day of our operations, every problem, every challenge, it just seems to only be happening to us. And so he starts to document all of these challenges, and he realizes that there's a set of frustrations, if you will, that seem to be shared by these entrepreneurs. And I'll take you through them one by one. The first is control, or the way he tells the story is, or the way at least entrepreneurs told the story to him, which is, I felt like there was a bus hurtling down the road at about 60 miles per hour. But here's the problem. I wasn't on the bus. I was chasing the bus. The bus was ahead of me. I'd lost control of my business, so to speak. The second is profit, or if we're being specific, not enough profit. It's always something that I think it almost seems like the goalposts are always shifting away from us. The third is people. And, if I was to run a poll with you right now and ask, do you have people in your business? Of course, 100% of you would say yes. The number one frustration and the number one set of challenges associated with any business, small, medium business, large business, growing a business, is people related. Well, the fourth is this concept of hitting the ceiling. And, without going too much on a tangent, when we're doing EOS, or when I'm coaching EOS, we actually have a beautiful little character, Squirrel, so that whenever we go down too much of a rabbit hole or a squirrel hole, is that even a thing? That squirrel gets tossed around. But we actually teach the concept of hitting the ceiling. And this was based on one of the most downloaded pieces on Harvard Business Review that was written by Dr. Larry Greiner. He wrote a piece called The Evolution and the Revolution of Business. And what he found out is that all businesses, every single business, past, present, future, which means, yes, yours as well, has hit the ceiling, is hitting the ceiling, or will hit the ceiling. And of course, in that situation, there really are only three outcomes. You can stagnate, and stagnation today is almost a one-way ticket out of town, because if we're not growing, if we're not moving, we're standing still, and the rate and the pace of change in this world will leave us behind. We can obviously go on a steady and slow decline into Bolivian, as Mike Tyson would say, and sometimes hurtle back down to earth by bouncing off that ceiling, or we can break through. And then the final one is just nothing's working. It doesn't, we seem to be working harder, not smarter. And the harder we work, the more frustrated we get, not only with ourselves, but with each other. That is when burnout tends to happen. Now, I don't know about you, but this is a little clip from the movie Inglourious Basterds. Hopefully you weren't watching and looking at those 5 frustrations, and for you, you were like, we're 5 for 5. In other words, we're a bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Is that the way you say it? That's a bingo.
You just say bingo. Bingo! How fun!
No, there's absolutely nothing fun about bingo with all 5 of those. And I should know, because I've been through it as well. I've been through those frustrations as a serial entrepreneur. So let me take a moment to just tell you my story. And my story really lives and exists in 2 parts, what I call BP and AP, before the pandemic and after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, a little bit about me. I started my career working for a fast food chicken company by the name of Nando's Chicken Land, a fast growing business in the quick service restaurant industry. I've been fortunate enough to write 6 books, the most recent of which just published a month ago, called Forever Changed: How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. And here's the entrepreneurial part. I started 2 companies. One I sold in spite of myself, and one I closed down because of myself. And I don't say that lightly. And then the pandemic hit, and I completely reinvented myself. I became a talk show host. I started Corona TV, which today is known as Joseph Jaffe Is Not Famous. 600 guests. This is Patrick Fabian, who played Howard Hamlin on Better Call Saul. I've just had just an amazing opportunity to meet entrepreneurs and influencers, tastemakers, decision makers. Started teaching at NYU. And then my brother reached out to me and he said, you know, you would make a great implementer. Now, that sounded painful. I didn't know what he meant, but as I began to do a little bit of research and finding out about EOS and finding out about the ability to coach leadership teams to become vision traction healthy, I guess I was also bitten by that same entrepreneurial spider that gave Gino Wickman superpowers. I actually wrote a piece recently called "Why Every Business Needs an Operating System." And if you think about it, this really does set us up for the rest of this webinar, because a machine, whether it's Mac OS or a PC versus Mac, operates on an operating system, right? The operating system switches on the device, regulates memory and storage, has a fan to prevent it from overheating. But those are just the basic foundational elements of what switches on and powers the machine. But what makes the machine exceptional is the software, the apps that then get loaded or downloaded and built and customized and personalized. And that leads us to the operators, which is us, human beings. We also run on an operating system. The organs in our body that regulate blood flow and oxygen flow, that wake us up in the morning and help us fall asleep at night, that allows the left foot to go in front of the right foot, or if you see me dancing, you'd be referring to 2 left feet. But that's another story for another day. And again, what do? We create apps or software in the form of reading books or attending webinars or perhaps going to college, doing an MBA, etc., that allows us to customize and personalize. Well, it just stands to reason if machines run on an operating system and we humans run on an operating system, then what about a business that uses machines powered by humans? Again, it just stands to reason that we could benefit from an operating system. And especially if this looks like your business, chaos. You know, it's fine to say we thrive in and on chaos. You know, we find order within chaos, but it doesn't have to be so chaotic. It doesn't have to be so complicated. The business can be complex, but it doesn't have to mean that everything has to be complicated. We can get simple. We can keep it simple. And from an EOS standpoint, it couldn't get more simple or simpler than 3 words: vision, traction, healthy. The ability to get everyone in the company aligned around where the business is going and how to get it there. A sense of discipline and accountability around executing and implementing said vision. And then finally, health, team health, cohesive, functional health, where an entire leadership team, where the entire company are rowing in the same direction. Can you imagine rowing where one always going left and the other one is going right? One is going forward, one is going backwards. Of course, what happens in that situation is we just end up moving in a circle or not going anywhere at all. So Gino goes out and with 136 of these individual challenges, he actually realizes that there is a model. There are 6 key components, and the ability to actually deliver against these 6 key components. Guess what? All, and I mean all, like, remember the movie, A Beautiful Mind? Suddenly the writing starts to move around. Everything starts to shift. Everything makes sense. They melt away like a hot knife through butter. These are the 6 key components. The first is vision. You have to have a strong vision of where the company is heading and a plan in terms of how to get it there. Number 2 is people. You can't have a strong vision without strong people that are in place to execute that vision. Now, there are a lot of people that talk about different names. What makes a good person, a rock star, an A-team player? But what we do and what is important to be able to do is to be able to get to the root cause of what makes a great person, and not just a great person, but a great person for you, for your company. Well, the third is data. And we're not talking about running a business on ego and subjectivity and intuition and gut feel. I mean, that's important from a leadership standpoint, but we're talking about running a business on objective, independent, hard data points. And when you have a company that is executing against vision, people, and data, the entire company becomes a lot more transparent, open, and honest in terms of being able to identify real problems, but also opportunities. They bubble up to the surface when you have this transparency. Well, the fourth is issues. And I'll just put it as simple as I can. If you don't get really, really good at being able to solve issues when they come up, not if, because not only do you have people in your business, but you have issues. It's not a question. It's rhetorical. It's obvious. Every business has, if you have people, you have issues, but how do you solve your issues? And if you can't get really good at being able to get to the root cause and solving them so that they go away forever for the greater good of the organization, you will not be able to move forward. Well, the fifth is process. And here what we're talking about is just being able to take the most important aspects of doing business your way and doing them the same way, the right way, each and every time, so that they become standardized, efficient, scalable, so that running your business becomes more fun and more profitable. And finally, traction. This is where the rubber hits the road. There is a reason why traction is on the ground, on the bottom, and vision is on the top, because you can have your head in the clouds, but you need to have your feet on the ground. This is all about the executional phase of the business. As Gino would say, vision without traction is hallucination. So this is the EOS model. This is a model now that is being used by 24,000 companies worldwide, amongst 800 coaches that have implemented about 136,000 session days. This is the model. And we say at EOS, and I'm saying it to you today, that, and this is a bold statement, but it's true. Every single challenge that you have inside your company is the result, or will be the result, of weakness or deficiency in one or more of these 6 key components. And so installing or instilling this operating system, you're on a journey towards mastery. You are on a journey towards being able to get to, I'd like to tell you 100% strong, but the reality is you will never get to 100% strong, because the goalposts are always shifting. But I will tell you that 100% of all companies that implement this system over 2 years or less are able to get to 80% strong. So if you commit to the process over 2 years or less, you will get to 80% strong. And there'll be an organizational checkup, and that I'll share with you towards the end of the session, that will allow you to see where you are in your business. So now imagine that delta. Most companies, don't worry, you're not alone. You know, you're normal, you're in the same boat. Most companies start out at about 20%, but we're on this journey towards 80%. So I'm going to walk you through them now in a little bit more detail. This is the part where I'm going to open up the fire hose, and so just sit back, open your mouth, and be prepared to be hopefully not overwhelmed, maybe a little bit of overload, but hopefully not overwhelmed. So the vision component has 2, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you or introduce you to 2 tools or disciplines associated with each key component. The vision component lives in the form of 8 questions that are documented and written into what we call the Vision Traction Organizer. The Vision Traction Organizer is a 2-page document. It's almost like an unspoken contract amongst the members of the leadership team. And it's going to document and summarize every key component of your vision, of where you're going and how to get it there. There are 2 parts to it, the vision side and the traction part. And what I'm going to do is actually walk you through them in a little bit more detail. So the first is core values. Your core values at the core it's your belief set. It is your culture. It is what you believe, and it's how you behave. And it's what makes you different to any other company in the entire world. We often say that our clients are snowflakes. No 2 companies are exactly alike. But in order to be able to set your core values, you've got to be able to discover them. You've got to be able to define them. And then you've got to be able to deliver them. You've got to live your core values. These core values are going to become instrumental in terms of how you hire, how you fire, how you recognize, how you reward, how you incentivize. People will start to self-select and be able to determine if they are, in fact, the right person for your organization. You will attract the right people and you will repel the wrong people. But you have to be very clear about those core values. There is Patrick Lencioni has what he calls the value trap. There is what's known as accidental values. There are aspirational values. And then there's what's called permission to play. Generic. Everyone does them. So if everyone does them, it doesn't make them unique. to you. Now, of course, you could say, well, wait a second, honesty and integrity, those are important values, sure. But everyone says them. In fact, good old Enron had integrity as one of their core values. You have to be able to live it. And when you do, you're able to, as I said, use this as a basis to be able to really isolate and elevate and celebrate the right people for your business. Well, the next is core focus. What, and this has been called many things, by the way, vision and mission and your why. Simon Sinek says start with why. Jim Collins refers to the hedgehog effect. But we look at it two ways: your purpose, cause, and or passion, and then also your niche. In other words, why do you exist? And also, what do you do that is world class, that is best in class, better than anyone in your space? When your purpose, cause, or passion and your niche come together, it is the sweet spot. And for all you golfers out there, you would know that when you hit the ball in the sweet spot of your driver or your iron, your club, it will go long, it will go true, and it will travel great distances. And you don't have to absolutely smack it as hard as you possibly can. You just have to hit it in that sweet spot. Put it differently, when you don't hit in the sweet spot, then you hit it fat, you slice, you hook, you shank, you whiff. In other words, you're playing a round of golf with me. But this is what happens when you get distracted by the bright and shiny objects, when you lose your focus, when you try and be everything to all people, you end up being nothing to nobody. Well, the third aspect is what we call the 10-year target. This can actually be 5 to 30 years out, but for the most part, 10 years seems like a good time frame to actually aim towards. And this is where we ask, what do you want from your business? If we're getting real and getting simple and getting what you want from your business, what do you want? Interestingly enough, most, or I don't want to say most, but a fair amount of business owners, when talking to Gino after implementing EOS, and he said, what was the surprising deliverable? What was the biggest benefit? Did you think it was profit, top line, bottom line, market share? No, they said it was peace. It was peace of mind. It was being able to sleep at night. So what do you want from your business? This is your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. And there's nothing stopping you from achieving it. The next aspect is your marketing strategy. And so here, all we're looking at is being able to define your ideal customer based on their demographic, their geographic, their psychographic. For EOS, we talk about privately held companies, 10 to 250 employees that have a growth mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset. They're open, they're honest, they're prepared to be vulnerable, and they're more dissatisfied with the status quo than change. The next is your 3 uniques. What are the 3 things that truly you do differently and better than anyone else? And I see Michael is here from my first client, and we just covered off on these 3 uniques just the other day. The way I look at the 3 uniques is quite simple. First of all, we look at the first one. Maybe let's take your 10 fiercest competitors. Let's just say most of them might share that same unique. But when we add the second unique, only some of them would have both. And finally, when you get to your 3 uniques, none of them should be able to deliver, because if any of them can deliver those 3 uniques the same as you or the same uniques as you, guess what? They're not unique anymore. So this is where we attempt to find our, inch wide and mile deep, and then to be able to deliver that. And it informs everything in terms of our messaging, our communications. The next is proven process. And by proven process, we're talking about the way, it's like a customer journey. It's the way you do business. I'll show you EOS's proven process. It's something that you rinse and repeat. You do it the same way each and every time, and it is designed in order to be able to minimize the perceived risk, the cost of doing business. If you know that we're not practicing on you, that we've done this many times, that makes your ability to part with your hard-earned dollars with us a little bit easier. And then if we need a little bit more, we have a guarantee, or a guarantee with teeth. In other words, a guarantee with teeth is something that it's really going to hurt if you don't deliver. There's so many wonderful guarantees out there from, for example, Domino's, your pizza free in 30 minutes. Your pizza free if you don't deliver in 30 minutes, I should say. Otherwise, Domino's is going out of business. So if we don't deliver your pizza in 30 minutes, it's free. Or how about getting a loaner car when you go to the body shop? If you're deciding between two loaner shops, what is the real pain point for a customer? It's how am I going to get back home? It's how am I going to get to work? And so the guarantee in place is really a guarantee that says it doesn't matter how long it takes for your car to get fixed and be returned to you, you're going to be okay. EOS has a guarantee as well, which is every single session is fully guaranteed, no questions asked. If I deliver value, you hand me a check, and if I don't, you don't. It is as simple as that. Well, next we have the 3-year picture. And for the first time, I like to think of this as we're reverse engineering that BHAG, that 10-year target. So if we had an idea of what we were trying to achieve in 10 years, now we're going to do the first stress test, the first reality check. What does it look like in 3 years' time? We're going to pin ourselves down. We're going to commit to a revenue target, a profit number, and a key measurable that is an internal measurable. It's a measurable that every employee in your business and your leadership team are very clear about. It's not something you necessarily communicate with your customer. And then we're going to say, well, what does it look like? And we're going to document exactly how many employees, how many offices, how many product lines. Can you see yourself in this picture? In fact, we're going to ask you to close your eyes. We're going to ask you, can you see what I'm saying? Can you picture it? Because if everyone can visualize what this picture looks like, then everyone is likely to be on the same page. And we can be as specific as possible when it comes to number of customers, type of customers, how many employees, how many floors, how many offices. We want to get super, super specific. Well, that is the vision side of the document. Now we move to the traction side of the document. And we start off with a 1-year plan. Again, can you see what's happening here? Now we're saying, well, if we want to achieve that 3-year picture, what does the 1-year plan look like? What does that revenue target look like, and profit and measurable? And then what we do is we put down 3 to 7 goals for the year. Prioritize goals for the year. Less is more, because when everything's important, nothing's important. When we have too many goals, it's really hard to be able to prioritize and to be able to assign bandwidth and resources. So 3 to 7 goals. Next, we move to rocks. And over a 90-day period, once again, we're going to set our revenue, our profit, and our measurables. Let me introduce you to the concept of rocks. So one way to think about it is the glass container. We fill it with rocks first, then pebbles. And then when it looks like it's full, unfortunately, in this case, sand will seep in and fill it to the top. And if we want to take it one step further, we can actually add a fair amount of water before it overflows. Well, of course, if we start off with the water and we work our way backwards, we're going to end up where we're not going to be able to put too many or enough rocks in. But if a rock represents our most important business priority over the course of the next 90 days, then our objective is to fill it with 3 to 7 of these priorities. This is what we call the 90-day world. It is a 90-day reality, and it is based on the fact that every 90 days, after a while, we need to stop, we need to pause, we need to reflect, we need to introspect, we need to take stock of what we've achieved or not, and then be able to replenish our energy, restock, revive, recharge, and then move forward. We always say when we're training this, when I'm training this, if we achieve these rocks over the next 90 days, would this have been not a good quarter, but a great quarter? And then finally, we get to our issues list. Nothing slips through the cracks with EOS. We make sure that we are always documenting every single issue and then being able to solve it. So once we've been able to document these 8 questions in the VTO, then comes the ability to share it by all. People have to hear something 7 times in order to really hear it for the first time. And so every 90 days, you're going to share your core values and your core focus and your core target, your 10-year target with every employee in your company. I can tell you every single 90 days, when we have our connects, our internal connects at EOS, the visionary of the company shares these core values with us. And every time, not only do I learn something new, but I get excited. I get revved up for the next 90 days. This is what it is to be 100% strong in the vision component. Well, now let's move to people. In people, you're going to hear 2 terms. The right people in the right seats. You've got to have both. It's a Jim Collins term. How do you define and how do you determine the right person for your company? Well, we use a tool here called the People Analyzer. And the People Analyzer is now, for the very first time, going to take those core values. Remember, I said your core values will help you hire and fire and retain and reward and recognize and attract and repel. So these are the EOS core values: humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing, and do what you say. And we're going to put everyone in the company through this People Analyzer, starting with you, starting with the leadership team. So we're going to ask a question when we look at our employees or our leaders. Do they exhibit this core value most of the time? If so, we'll give them a plus. Do they not exhibit this core value most of the time? We'll give them a minus. Or sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. That's a plus minus. And we're going to go ahead and be able to determine, based on this, where they fit on the bar. We're going to create a bar, typically with a company of 5 core values. We're going to go with 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses. You're either above the bar or below the bar. To be very clear, if there is no negative, there is no minus. If someone most of the time do not exhibit that core value, you're going to need to have a conversation with them to be able to determine how to get them back on track. Well, what about the right seats? So now you have the right people or not, but how do you determine if they're in the right seats? Well, we use a tool called the accountability chart, and the way we teach it is structure first, people second. This is so difficult. Everyone struggles with it. Why? Because we start talking about the person, but you don't create a company around people and personalities. You create a company around structure and accountability. And so what we're going to set out to do with the accountability chart is customize an accountability chart around your company. We start off with a basic belief that there are 3 core functions, and all 3 of them must be strong. All 3 of them must be strong. It's not good enough just to have, for example, marketing and sales, how you attract and acquire customers, right? If the marketing and sales function is strong and the finance seat is strong, which is really regulating the flow of human and financial capital around your company, cash flow, but the operations function is weak, well, that's a leaky bucket. As you gain a customer, you lose them. It's a revolving door. Or what happens when your marketing and sales function is weak and the other 2 are strong? Well, you're all dressed up with nowhere to go. And finally, of course, when marketing and sales is strong and operations is strong, but finance is weak, Well, unfortunately, you probably go the same direction as 95% of small and medium businesses, which is out of business. Cash flow is the number one reason why companies fail. Now, within EOS, there is an additional function that is a mandatory, and it's called the integrator. The integrator, they are the drum that beats through the organization. They are the glue that binds the entire company together. They are the people that get things done. They are focused on the devil in the details. They are executional maestros. And in 50% of cases of companies that work with EOS, that is how it looks. But in another 50% of cases, we have a visionary role. Now, the visionary is the exact opposite of the integrator. They don't want to sweat the small stuff. They don't like to get bogged down in details. They kind of get heavy and a little depressed when there's conflict. They come into meetings with 20 ideas at a time, and 18 of them are awful, but 2 of them are going to change the world and change the game. And when the visionary and the integrator work really, really well together, well, that's what we call rocket fuel at EOS. We don't want visionaries and integrators to become trapped in each other's roles. We don't want them stepping on each other's toes. We want them to be a dynamic duo. And that is the basis for the accountability chart. Next, what we want to do is we want to actually be able to come up with 5 roles, not 7, maybe 4, not 9, maybe 3, but for the most part, 5 roles. You're always going to find 5 roles. Trust me on this one. So, for example, we're going to look at 5 roles, and then we're going to go ahead and attempt to put names in, because we've created the structure. So structure first, people second. So here's an example: marketing and sales. The marketing and sales seat, we have 5 roles. The first is LMA. LMA is leadership, management, and accountability. For the most part, what we mean by LMA is it's all the people stuff. So the hiring, the firing, the performance reviews, the coaching, the training, the development, the conflict resolution, the collaboration, everything that is people related lives in the LMA role. And then we have 5 more. In this case, it says marketing, hitting sales numbers, selling, and account management. So pretty generic. Well, let's use a different example now. Let's just say that we are looking at the forward seat for a football team. Let's say Argentina's football team or soccer team in US terminology. So we're deciding that there is a seat on the leadership team. It's called forward, and LMA because, you know, maybe you're the captain. What else? Scoring goals, creating chances for others, finding space between opponents, and thinking and acting quickly and decisively. Well, let's put a name down for this. How about Lionel Messi? Would Lionel Messi be a good fit for this particular seat? Well, we actually have a tool designed to help you figure that out, and it's called GWC. Do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the earned capacity to do it? So in the case of Lionel Messi, does he get it? Does he have a God-given aptitude? Does he have an ability? Does he really understand what is expected? Does he want it? Is he passionate? Does this get him out of bed in the morning? Does he live for football? You know, football is life, to use that quote from Ted Lasso. And does he have the training and the skills and the experience in order to do it? Well, of course, we understand that Lionel Messi would GWC the seat. But if we were GWCing Lionel Messi for the coach role, the manager role of Argentina, he wouldn't be able to be the right, he might be the right person, but he might not be in the right seat. So after we have determined if they're the right people using core values, we then go ahead and we determine using GWC if they get it, if they want it, and if they have the capacity to do it. Here's the key. We need 3 emphatic yeses. A no is a deal breaker, and a hesitation or I'm not really sure about if I want it, or you're GWCing someone who reports into you, they're going, I don't know that they get it, or these are deal breakers. They're in the wrong, you know, they're in the wrong seat. and you got to be able to do something about it. So once we've been able to now use GWC to fill in the right, hopefully, people in the right seats, we've customized our accountability chart. We have created 5 roles, including but not limited to LMA. What happens? Well, we'd like to believe that we're going to end up with 100% right people in the right seats. But the reality is that's not always the case. There are 2 types of people issues that you're going to encounter or face. The first is the right person in the wrong seat. This is the salt, they're the salt of your organization. They as Gina would say, they reek of your culture. They are so the right person, but they're just not cutting it. This is what Mike Payton, one of the, he's an implementer, but he was an ex-visionary of the company, or past visionary, I should say. He calls the accidental nonprofit. You're not an accidental nonprofit if you are a for-profit business. When you're carrying too many right people in the wrong seat, it ultimately is going to slow you down and move you towards stagnation. You've got to be able to sit down with them. Hopefully you can find a different seat for them, but if you can't, you've got to have a tough conversation. Well, then the other one is the wrong person in the right seat. So this is someone who does not exude those core values, but they're great at their job. They're hitting their quotas. They're an unbelievably capable or competent salesperson, but they'll stab someone in the back. They're not a team player. They're too political. I'm going to beg you in this case. I'm going to plead with you to have a tough conversation with them, because they are toxic and they will rot your business from the inside out. You need 100% right people in the right seats. And when you do that, you will be 100% strong. Well, let's move to the third key component, and that is data. And I'm going to talk to you about a scorecard and measurables. Remember what I said earlier? This is not what we refer to. If we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. No opinions. Find the data. Embrace the data. Get comfortable with the data, because it's there. It's there for you, and it lives in the form of a scorecard. 5 to 15 key measurables that are looked at on a weekly basis over 13 consecutive weeks. I'll tell you a quick story, about Charles Schwab, the other Charles Schwab. He was running Bethlehem Steel, and he went to the lowest, poorest performing mill, and he went to the foreman and he asked the foreman, how many heats yesterday during your shift did you complete? And the foreman said 6, and he went in chalk and wrote down 6 and put a big circle around it. Well, the next day the foreman came back and the number 6 had been rubbed out or erased and replaced with a 7. It wasn't before long that lowest performing steel mill was now the highest performing mill at Bethlehem Steel. What gets measured gets managed, and you have to believe that. So here's another analogy for you. It's called the 6-pack, or in my case, I have a 0-pack. Thank goodness you can only see me from the microphone up today. In flying, in aviation, a pilot has 6 key gauges or analytics or measurables that they need to be on top of at all time. These are ultimately responsible for the plane flying and not falling out the sky: altitude, speed, fuel, etc. So what is your 6-pack, or what is your 5 to 15 key measurables? We have to, again, less is more. We have to be able to prioritize. Otherwise, we get to what I call the Augustus Gloop effect. Our eyes are bigger than our stomach. We fall into the chocolate river, and our journey is over because we're trying to see and do too much. What are the key measurables that are going to tell you what you need to know in terms of your company's health, your company's performance. And once we've determined what those 5 to 15 are, we're going to set a goal. We're going to determine whom within the leadership team and ultimately the entire company are responsible for actually providing that measurable. And then we're going to start to track those measurables over 13 consecutive weeks. In week 14, week 1 falls away. In week 15, week 2 falls away. We don't want to see red on that scorecard. We want to see green, in fact. And I will tell you one thing, when the scorecard is green or when the scorecard is not red, you will, not may, you will hit your financial goals. It is as simple as that. So obviously you have to find what those measurables are for your business. Each company is different. Out of 24,000 companies that are running on EOS, we have never yet seen one company with the exact same scorecard. We push you towards determining what a leading measurable is versus a lagging measurable. A lagging measurable is, for example, net profit. It's not much you can do about it if the number is low. But if you're able to continue to go upstream, 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 reverse engineer it, even when you think about number of clients, how many proposals were sent out? What is your proposal completion rate? How many leads did you generate? In order to generate a lead, how many meaningful conversations did you have? So on and so forth. And when you're able to do that, look at these 5 to 15 measurables on a weekly basis over 13 consecutive weeks, you start to see patterns emerging. You start to get really, really good at being able to see trends in your organization. So I call this a golden measurable. You're going to find whatever it is that matters and is meaningful to you is going to matter to the entire company. So that is the first. The second is this idea of a measurable. We believe that everyone inside the company, absolutely everyone in the company, needs to have a measurable, because with a measurable comes ownership. And when everyone feels that sense of ownership, they're all going to want to chip in. And that is 100% strong. All right, now let's talk about issues. Because again, when last I checked, you had people and therefore you have issues. Well, the first tool or discipline is this idea of an issues list. So the important thing to say, and actually I'll talk about it in just a brief moment, this idea of psychological safety. We want to make sure that everyone in the business is okay to raise their hand and be able to say, I got an issue, without fear of retribution, recrimination, humiliation, being ostracized. We don't want anyone to feel intimidated. In fact, we want the exact opposite. We want them to feel empowered, emblazoned, emboldened to be able to raise their hand and say, I got an issue. By the way, issues are not always bad. They're good. They're good, they're bad, they're ugly. They're issues. Now it's time to be able to solve those issues. So as long as it finds its way to an issues list, you're well on your way towards being able to solve those. Remember, get to the root cause, solve them so that they go away forever for the greater good of the organization. Psychological safety is the way to do that, because in a high-performing environment where there is discipline and accountability as well as team health, that's when you get to high psychological safety and high performance standards. You don't have to sacrifice one. It is not mutually exclusive. It is not zero sum. So let's talk about solving them now. I like to use the analogy of whack-a-mole. Set them up, knock them down. And the reality is, as soon as you knock down one mole, another two sprout up, and you knock down two, another one sprouts up. They never quite go away in terms of unique issues or different issues. But if you can get to the point where you can actually put it to bed forever, you don't have to keep on going through maybe another analogy, mixing metaphors here, Groundhog Day or Molehill Day, if you will. So how do we do that? We do that with a tool called IDS, the Issues Solving Track. IDS stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. This actually drove Gino mad. He literally was so frustrated because he noticed that companies, they did a fairly good job, and by fairly good, I mean satisfactory job of being able to identify the issue. They didn't really get to the root cause, but here's what they did do. They discussed and they discussed and they discussed and they discussed, and they never quite got anywhere. They never quite got to solve. So here's how we do IDS at EOS. First of all, we prioritize what are the 3 most important issues that must be solved. In this case, we've got Andy S, right seat, question mark, website rock off track, and the good old Anodyne merger. Now we begin to actually discuss Andy S right seat. We try and get to the root cause of what the real issue is. You know, in this particular case, is it really about Andy, or is it about something else inside the company? And once we've done that and we've discussed it, the key is to be able to move on to the solve phase. We actually have a very simple litmus test or approach, call it almost like a guideline, which is more than once is politicking. So when anybody discusses or brings it up, which is, I'm not sure you heard me, or I just want to repeat that, or it feels like we're on a second go round, kind of that Groundhog Day, the integrator or whomever's running the meeting is going to say, we need to move on, because more than once is politicking. So we move to the solve phase. And once we've solved, we cross it off, we move to number 2, we solve that. We move to number 3, we solve that, and then we move on to 4, 5, and 6, and we do it again and again and again. That is what it is to be 100% strong, to make sure everything lands on an issue list and then gets discussed and solved so that it goes away forever for the greater good of the organization. All right, home stretch. Let's talk a little bit about process. Well, the first element, we actually have a tool called the 3-step documenter, and what that does is it allows us to recognize that we can't, look, here's what we're not trying to do here. We're not trying to end up with an 800-page SOP manual that nobody looks at and nobody follows and is completely out of date. We recognize that businesses have a handful, again, 3 to 7 core processes for the most part. Let's say people or HR, marketing, sales, a bunch of ops, customer service, and accounting. So we want to identify these core processes. And then what we want to be able to do is document them and simplify. We use a 20-80 approach. We use a 20-80 approach that is designed to just document the 20% of steps that will get you 80% of the way there. The enemy is perfection. The solution is the ability to get you far enough that your people are able to then be able to build and pick up the ball and run with it. And once we've done that, we've documented our core processes, our 3 to 7 core processes in 3 to 7 pages, or using a 20-80 approach. We're then able to put it into a very slim binder to brand it the Acme Company way, the Anodyne way, whatever it may be, but your unique way, your secret sauce, the way that you do business, the way that you do that voodoo so well. And then we want to make sure that we can allow people to do what they were put on this earth to do, which is to just be exceptional. Systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. This is the fun part. This is the ability to customize and personalize and use our intuition and use our creativity and actually defeat the AI bots and the machines. And in some cases, it is the very flawed nature of what makes us humans that allows us to be able to sometimes see things that the perfect computer is not able to. So once we've been able to document it, we do FBA, which is followed by all. This is where leadership, management, accountability, training, measurement, and updating takes place. This is alive. It is organic. It is dynamic. It isn't, set it and forget it, living on the shelf and collecting dust. So that is the process element and being 100% strong. All right, last but definitely not least is the traction component. Remember, the idea behind traction is vision without traction is hallucination. This is where rubber hits the road. And we do that with two tools or disciplines that I'll share with you today. There obviously are more, but the two leading ones are rocks and meeting pulse. Napoleon Hill, in his book, Think and Grow Rich, he spoke about procrastination. He actually said, successful, wealthy people make decisions quickly and take a long time to change their minds. But brokies, people that are not successful, they take a long time to make decisions, and then they change their mind like they change their underwear. This is all built and based on the procrastination model. I don't know how many of you would have said, like back at school or college, that you only really started learning for an exam the night before. This line, I work great under pressure. That is not a way to run a business. It's not a way to run your life. That all this anxiety and tension mounts up at the last minute. There is a better way to be able to create a much more harmonious, efficient pulse that beats through your organization. This is the meeting pulse. There are things you will do once a year. There are things you will do quarterlies 4 times a year. And then there is, of course, the 90-day world that lives in these quarterlies, your rocks, your ability to set 90-day priorities, your most important business and individual priorities, and then to be able to retool and recharge and reset and move forward. But the second is the concept of the meeting pulse. This is a weekly meeting. It takes place on the same day every week, on the same time every week. It starts on time, it ends on time, and it has the same agenda. And there are only 2 excuses to miss the L10 meeting, as we call it, the level 10 meeting, and that is vacation or death. And by death, we mean your death. So Vince Lombardi, he said early is on time and on time is late. The meeting starts on time, it ends on time, it's in the same day, the same time of, every week on that day, and it follows the same agenda. And there are only 2 excuses to miss it, which is death, as in yours, or vacation. We call it the level 10 meeting because you will rate that meeting. Trust me on this one. You will get there to rate those meetings 10s. And right now, if I had to ask you, how do you rate your meetings? Well, thankfully, I'm not going to put you on the spot. But for the most part, when people are rating their meetings 2s and 3s and 4s, can you imagine what happens when you're able to get that meeting to a 10? Michael just made a comment, and he said, we've been hitting a 10 in our L10 meetings lately. And finally, yes, it takes time. It takes time to fall in love with your scorecard. It takes 1 to 3 months. It takes time to finalize your accountability chart. There is one client at EOS that has been running on EOS for 9 years, and they're still finalizing their accountability chart. But you will get to a 10 in your level 10 meeting. And I'm going to show you why. It's foolproof. I'm going to show you why. Because you start off with being able to go through good news. Personal and professional good news, 5 minutes. So if you've got a leadership team of 7 or 8, you've got to get through 8 people with personal and professional good news in 5 minutes. Why do we do this? It's called the segue. The segue because we need to separate ourselves from being in the business to now being on the business. If we want to run our business, we have to find that separation, because now, like a board of directors, like the leadership team, we have to rise and elevate. We have to look down at the entire business holistically, warts and all, the business that we created, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way to do that is through good news. Also, because oftentimes we lose touch with our colleagues. And so when we actually find out what's going on in their lives, it can be very powerful. Well, next we go through the scorecard. We go through those 5 to 15 leading, hopefully, measurables that we're monitoring on a weekly basis. And we want to see if that scorecard is red or green. We then go through a rock review, company and individual rocks. We're only permitted to say on track, off track, or completed. And then we go through customer and employee headlines. Imagine that. Imagine in 15 minutes, we have gone through the health, our financial health and wellness of our organization, our business priorities, and getting a sense, getting in touch as opposed to being out of touch or losing touch with our internal and external employees. But note that we're only reporting. There's no discussion, because anything that needs to be discussed is going to drop down into our issues list, which I'm going to come to in a moment. Finally, we recap our to-do list to make sure that 90% of our to-dos are done. Otherwise, we have another issue. So this is what's happening now in 25 minutes. There isn't another meeting structure on the planet that can achieve as much productivity and efficiency as these 25 minutes can deliver. So now we need to go into our issues solving track. We need to IDS. And this is another reason why the L10 meeting is so powerful, because 60 out of 90 minutes is spent solving real issues. Scorecard is red, drop it down. Rocks are off track, drop it down. Customer or employee headlines need discussing, drop it down. 90% of our to-dos are not getting done, drop it down. And then any other issues that need to be added. So we're going to spend 60 minutes now going through, setting them up, knocking them down as best as we can. And then we have 5 minutes left. And in the remaining 5 minutes, we do three things. We conclude by recapping our to-dos, by doing what's called cascading messaging, which is anyone outside of this meeting needs to be told or informed of a decision or a to-do. We need to make sure that someone is in charge of telling them. And then we rate the meeting 1 to 10. And that's how we determine the last thing that we're left with is a rating for that meeting. That is traction. When you have this 90-day world operating and these weekly L10 meetings, that is what's called 100% strong. So that is the EOS model. Those are the 6 key components. This is your journey towards mastery and becoming at a minimum 80% strong. Now we come to the final phase, which is get what you want. Well, what do you want? It doesn't matter what I think you want. It matters what you want. Or maybe I should say something or rephrase it. What's standing in your way of getting what you want? And if you believe, whether it's blind faith or otherwise, that the key towards being able to get you there is the ability to adopt some kind of operating system or to improve or increase the discipline and accountability in your organization. If you believe that you deserve everything that you want from your business, if you believe that chaos is not an acceptable default or outcome, if you want it badly enough, then nothing should be standing in your way. So I spoke about people and I spoke about machines and I spoke about businesses at the beginning. And I said, it stands to reason that a business should be operating or implementing an operating system. But can a business survive without an operating system? And the answer is, I suppose, yes, in the same way that a fish can survive out of water briefly and in extreme stress. If you believe at the end of the day that the pain, the frustration, the anxiety is the ante up, is part and parcel, is the cost of doing business. I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. It is not true. You deserve everything you want from your business, and you deserve peace and peace of mind. Please email me if you'd like a copy of this white paper, where I basically showed a whole bunch of tenets of exactly how a business can implement an operating system. Now, which implementing system do you choose? Well, I will tell you, there are many out there, but the EOS Creed says that a company cannot run on multiple operating systems. You must choose one. Otherwise, you end up with what I call the Frankenstein effect. You borrow and beg and steal and cobble from a whole bunch of different practices and coaching courses and books, and you end up with a bit of a monster. Find a system, choose a system, and stick with that system. And obviously, should you choose EOS, I'm going to provide some tools and some resources for you. So the EOS foundational tools that I covered today, the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, the Accountability Chart, Rocks, the Meeting Pulse, and the Scorecard, they're actually all available to you if you want for free. All you got to do is go to eosworldwide.com. You'll find a whole bunch of things, not just the tools, videos, Traction Library. We have access to Basecamp, and of course, the ability to find, to contact, and potentially work with an EOS implementer, an EOS coach like myself. Also, go ahead and take that organizational checkup. You can use that QR code right there to be able to take the checkup and see where you score. Remember, most businesses start out at around 20. So, you know, if you're between 20 and 60 or 70, there's delta, there's opportunity, there's potential. I was going to be a little bit, just a little bit cynical and saying, if you end up with 85 or 90 or 95, well, then you're a pathological liar and I can't help you. But in all seriousness, it's a great way to see where you stack up. And remember, you're normal. You're not alone. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of reassurance as well. So this is the EOS process. Remember earlier we spoke about a proven process. Should you end up hiring an implementer or being interested in what that looks like, the first thing that we do is we come in and we deliver a complimentary, no obligation-free 90-minute meeting. A little bit different, but also a lot of similarities with what I shared with you today. The main reason and the main difference is it's with your entire leadership team. So we work for the leadership team. It's not enough for a CEO to come and say, we're doing this, and whether you like it or not. No, that's not how it works. So the 90-minute meeting then is followed up with a focus day, 30 days later, vision building day 1, 30 days later, vision building day 2. And within 60 days of beginning this journey, you're already in execution mode and on a journey towards mastery. So, Michael, surprise quote from you. During our EOS focus day, day 1 of our EOS journey, we kept asking ourselves, how can we be Joseph's first client? Sometimes a person is born to do something. That's Joseph Jaffe as an EOS implementer. If you own or manage a business and you don't know what EOS please reach out to me. You're missing out. So grateful. I love this quote and I use it and I even wrote it in my book simply because CCI was my first client. And I went into it feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit insecure. But at the end of the day, behind me, and I mean it quite literally behind me, is the fact that there is a proven system with a set of powerful yet simple tools that will allow you to get what you want from your business. And I am just one of many delivery mechanisms. So I want to leave you with a quote. This is my first boss, Nando's Chicken Land, the founder of Nando's. He said, it's not important to be the best accountant. It is important to hire the best accountant. It is all about people. It is all about talent, both inside your organization and outside your organization. You have limited time, you have limited resources, you have limited energy. Choose wisely when you delegate and elevate to a highest ability, and your unique ability. And so thank you for spending, I guess, an hour 20 with me today. I appreciate you very much. And if there is time, I would love to answer any questions. So if you want to put any comments or questions into the chat, I would love to answer them. I'm going to read what Michael said earlier. No, it's just propaganda, Michael, but he said, Joseph is our implementer for EOS, and we're so happy we chose him. Each time he goes through these EOS fundamentals, it gets more and more clear. It's a wonderful system, and it has been making our business so much more reliable and predictable. Well, I appreciate that. But what I would love to do is answer any questions that you might have. So please go ahead and you've got to ask me at least one question. I actually have a sound effect. See, Caleb is there, so thank you for the invitation, Joseph. Oh, good. How does a visionary go about finding their perfect integrator? That's a great question. And, the way it actually works when we go through Focus Day, we first go ahead and we create the integrator role. Remember, the idea is structure first, people second. So the integrator role is mandatory. The visionary is not. And so in some cases, we determine, is this the same person? Is it one person who shares both visionary and integrator roles and capabilities? So once we've got that integrator role fleshed out in terms of those, again, 5 aspects of what the integrator does, LMA, business plan, removing obstacles and hurdles, solving problems, etc. Then we determine if there is a visionary. Now, visionaries typically will be founders of the company or CEOs of the company, but not always the case. Not always the case. So when you ask, how does a visionary go about finding their perfect integrator? Hopefully, the integrators inside the company. In fact, we cannot leave the Focus Day without having someone in that seat. So there are a couple of rules with the accountability chart. The first is you cannot have 2 people in one seat, because when 2 people are accountable, no one is accountable. The second is you can have one person in multiple seats, but the third is that you must have someone in a seat. So when we do that Focus Day, for example, if you have a leadership team and you have a box, right? You have a seat that no one wants, you have to put someone in that box, and it's either going to be someone in that room, or if it's very clear that there's someone outside of that room that would fit that seat, that GWCs that role. Remember, they have to GWC the role as well. Then they would join the leadership team. I'll put it differently. If no one in the leadership team wants that role, wants that seat, well, how was it getting done before? So, a finance seat, for example. Well, no one wants the finance seat. Well, how can you not have someone representing finance at the leadership team level? And this is what happens in a small business or growing business or a startup type of a business, is everyone's doing everything. Everyone is stepping on each other's toes. Everyone is pitching in and wearing multiple hats, and that's okay. That is okay. This is not designed to create bureaucracy or red tape or inefficiencies. It's quite the opposite. But what it is doing is being very clear about accountability. Someone has to be accountable. And that's why I end with that quote, right? It's not important to be the best accountant. It is important to hire the best accountant, because maybe the answer then is to hire the best accountant or fractional CFO, or whatever the case may be. Structure first, people second. And, you know, and GWC is the other way to answer the question for you, because you got to want it. Attitude, it's aptitude, you know, and you got to have both present. That hesitation, it's going to kill you in the end. When people are not 100% on board, you got to be all in, especially in a smaller business. You can't afford to have spectators. You can't afford to have passengers. You got to make a commitment. And discipline and accountability, one thing we say is you can have discipline and accountability in a, you know, in a culture that is high trust. Right? Some people say that discipline and accountability and being accountable to numbers, that indicates low trust. It's the exact opposite. It's high trust. Because we want to be accountable to our colleagues. We're not afraid to, you know, be transparent and have those numbers shared by all. So thank you for the question. I'll see if there are any other questions. We've got about a few minutes left. Don't make me go to I'm just kidding. I was going to say, don't make me go to my my Jeopardy music. No, I appreciate all of you very much today. I think you have my contact details. I will put it in the chat as well. But other than that, I will wait another 30 seconds, see if there are any more questions. Otherwise, I will stop the recording and give you back 13 minutes in your day. I'm just going to go ahead and put my... Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it very much. I'll just put my details there. And it looks like Michael LeBlanc has become my agent as well. So checks in the mail, commission will be sent to you as well. Well, thank you, all of you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And